Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Port Podcast, episode 301. I'm Benjamin Yoder here today, putting our real first toe into the actual 300s. Last week, we just put our foot on the surface as we got to 300, but now in 301, toes are starting to go in. We're getting into the new era that is exactly the same as the old era. So this week we're gonna be talking about Babylon's fall video update, and I got a pretty big update for that. Final Fantasy piano concert that I went to, just talking about that a little bit. We also got some updates on some Level 5 games, because there's a Level 5 event in this month. I forget what it's called, but yeah, we'll talk about some of those games. And then also a little bit of Wii U talk. If you've been paying attention to the news, you probably know what that Wii U talk is, but just in case you hadn't heard it, we will talk a little bit. And it's not about delisting games on the eShop or whatever. So yeah, Babylon's fall video. My goals of how quickly to put that thing together changed immensely over the last week. And probably not smart. I just sat down and powered through it. Literally, like, pretty much until a couple hours ago, you know, whenever I recorded the last podcast till now, I largely just worked on the Babylon's fall video for pretty much all my free time, which is maybe not the greatest choice that I've made in my life, but here we are. On the bright side, you know, I was talking about, like, trying to pace myself a little bit more, and I think I could have done that with the Babylon's fall video. And I think I was seeing real progress. I was pretty satisfied by it. But the big thing is I was starting to look at the time it was going to take for me to get to the end of making the Babylon's fall video. And then also I have a trip planned for Japan at the end of April. So I was kind of like, this is not probably going to line up very well. And I'll probably have to wait till I get back, and that'll be May. So I was like, okay, let's just power through it. So I just powered through it, and we got through it. So the video is basically done at this point. There's always some finer tweaks I could do on it, but I think at this point I'm going to kind of call it quits unless I change my mind sometime between now and we publish it and decide to do a little bit more cleanup. But yeah, so it's basically done. So that's cool. And I plan to have it up and available on the Ko-fi page if you want to check it out early, starting this week. So I might just go ahead and get it published. So you might be able to check it out now, honestly, or maybe not now, but you know, sometime within the next day or two. But I'll have it up by Wednesday at the latest. Let's just set that goal. Yeah, so you'll be able to watch it in its entirety there if you want to. Again, you just have to donate like $1, and you can get in to watch that early. The reason why I'm going to publish it there first and not elsewhere, one is because I need you to give me money. No, I mean, the Ko-fi obviously is there. Like, I want to provide an incentive for that. But, the other thing is that there's still more work to be done in terms of I need to, you know, get subtitles made for the video, and I need to, you know, put the table of contents and get everything, you know, separated onto sections. I need to make the thumbnail and stuff still. So, you know, there's still more work to be done once the video is done, right? So there's still things I need to do, steps I need to take. So if you are just waiting for, you know, whenever it's going to be publicly available, probably won't be this week. But I'm hoping in the next week or two that it will be out and available for everyone. But for now, I think if you just want to watch the video itself, it will be on the Ko-fi if you want to donate and get into that. You can also get the Damn Stompland review that I posted up. That is also in early access at the moment too. That's not going to go up until, I think, for free until, I think, mid-April. I think that's how I have it planned out. But the OCP Plus reviews and stuff like that, I think there's going to be like a month lead time on those probably, generally. So anyways, but yeah, the Babylon's video, you know, let me say this, like, you know, I've talked a lot about the changing direction of the channel and things like that. And the Babylon's video was made in between all that stuff happening. So, and putting it out, you know, I'm not saying that video is going to be a new direction for the channel. Obviously, if it's successful, then I think it's good to reevaluate that, figure out why it was successful, and maybe pursue some stuff. But if it comes out and it's like any other video where it kind of just comes out and then just kind of lives, then, I don't think you will see another video like the Babylon's video in terms of scope and scale. It's like a 40-minute video. In a lot of ways, it's like 4 videos in one. And I don't know, this may be something that keeps going forward. I don't really know. Maybe the easiest way to describe it is like, I kind of put everything up to 11 for this video a little bit, to a degree that sometimes I wonder if it was a little bit too much. But I think if I had turned it up to 12, I would have been unhappy. But I think at 11, I'm comfortable. There's some things I looked at in hindsight and was like, if I was starting from the beginning again, I may have changed how this was implemented. But because it's already done this way, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing how it is. I just think that I could have done it a different way. So there's some parts of the video I think are maybe a little, I don't know if forceful is the right word, but maybe I push a little harder than I usually push to be like, hey, listen to me kind of thing. Just like, hey, listen to what I'm saying to you right now. So hopefully it's something that you guys all can dig and all get into. And I think, because it is essentially 4 videos in one, it's a video that I think will appeal broadly to a lot of people who watch my stuff, which is kind of the intention. I don't want to get too deep into like what I'm thinking about for the channel. I've had further thoughts on the channel. I have gone through different ideas for what the channel should be that literally change overnight sometimes, of like, oh, here's an idea for what I want the channel to be, and that idea suddenly seems way better than the thing I was previously planning a lot. So I think I don't want to say too much about the direction of the channel still, but I think the big thing you can kind of hang on to if you are curious about that is that post I did on Ko-fi about like what one controller port is. And I think at the end of the day, I said, like, I just kind of want to make videos that are going to matter more than just like a little bit of trivia or just like, hey, here's a cool video game. And like, you're like, yeah, that's a cool video game. but like, what do I want you to take away from me talking about that game, right? And I think that has been the thing I've been trying to look at and try to figure out the best way to handle is how do I get you to take something away from these videos that isn't just cool video game, brah, kind of thing. And I think you'll get some of that in Babylon's Fall. Like, I think Babylon's Fall video, in a lot of ways, is a weird melding of what I was doing with the old like direction for the channel, which wasn't really much of a direction in general, honestly, or kind of a lot of different directions, and kind of melding that into one central piece and melding it into the overall thing I was trying to say with a lot of those videos, I think, in a lot of ways. And so I guess maybe you could look at that video as like me taking everything I've done in the past and trying to cram it all together and be like, look, this is what I've been trying to say in a lot of ways. Maybe, I don't know for sure if that's how I feel about it, but that's just my thoughts at the moment on it. So anyways, like I said, you should be able to see it soon if you donate on Ko-fi. If not, I'll be sure to let you know that it's going up at some point here. I also did a little other side project this week between the Babylon stuff, just to kind of like give myself a little breathing room. And that was something that I didn't really give a name of publicly, but internally, I think a folder is called like Twitter Bits or something like that. Basically probably off the Video Gaming Bits old Tumblr page kind of thing. And I've been talking about this for a while. I don't remember how much I talked about it on the podcast, but I've been trying to explore what like video game content looks like in short form media. And when I say short form, I mean like literal short form videos, TikToks, YouTube shorts, things like that. And a challenge of those videos is trying to say something very quickly and say something valuable and, do that in a very compressed period of time. And what do you say, right? What do you say that's interesting that will grab people kind of thing? And I've had various ideas of what this should be. Also, my cat's having a little zoomy moment at the moment, so sorry if you hear the little bell ringing around. I've been trying to think of like what that means, And maybe I should take his collar off. We'll see. We'll see how much he runs around more. But I've been trying to think about what that means. And, I've been watching YouTube Shorts. I don't use TikTok really. Occasionally I'll get linked to TikTok, but I don't do too much with it. I've been watching YouTube Shorts though, and I would not say it's been a enjoyable experience. There's some weird part of human lizard brain that if I get on a YouTube Shorts page and scroll, I will keep scrolling. And you have to kind of tell yourself to get out of that loop. So I think I understand what YouTube Shorts and TikTok are doing and how they grab your attention and how they hold you and things like that, right? And I think it's that quick access, quick flicking kind of thing of just here's a piece of content, catch my attention, move to the next one. You don't have to think between pieces of content. You are just presented with something and you make a choice, yes, no, and then that's what it is, right? Yes, no, I watch this or I don't watch this. But yeah, figuring out what is actually good content in that short form fashion, I think is a hard thing. There's entertaining content. I think that's important. But I don't know if I've seen a lot of good informational content around video games so far. I see a lot of speed runs, maybe a guy telling a story while he does a speed run. DK Oldies has made it my thing for a long time, and I think they're I know a lot of people are oh, they're a scam or whatever. I from what I have heard from outside of the whole drama, it just sounds like he has high prices or whatever, and doesn't necessarily or that group, I don't know how many people work there, doesn't necessarily take the greatest care of their consoles and stuff, but it sounds like they're still selling you a product and giving it to you kind of thing, right? So it doesn't really sound like a scam to me, but I think people are frustrated with the quality of service they're getting out of DK Oldies. But the actual YouTube Shorts channel for that, I think, is pretty decent. Again, I don't think you're really getting a lot of information, but you do get to see purchasing habits. Actually, that's maybe the one thing. You get to see what people are buying, and it's very much short form pickup videos, but with a consistent style, right? And it's hey, this guy purchased these things, and they go and do some fancy, photo shooting through all that stuff. But it is interesting to see what people are buying and bundling together, right? So I think there's some value in that as a content thing. Again, I don't buy from DK Oldies. I don't know anything about them and do not care about them. But I think it's been one of the better pieces of YouTube short content that I've seen personally when it comes to gaming stuff. But otherwise, I feel like I've been kind of unsatisfied with a lot of YouTube short content that I have consumed. Though, if you do like something, let me know. I'd be happy to hear or look at some stuff if you have seen stuff you liked. Anyways, all this is a very long way of me saying that. Sorry, I just realized how far off discussion we got. I probably should have said up front. I basically did short little tweets that focused on, what I think was cool about a game, right? Doesn't talk about good or bad. It doesn't really focus too much. It's just hey, Killer 7. Wow, the movement in this game is very sporadic in a neat way. That's not how I word it, but that focusing on the movement of Killer 7, right? There's the Doopoo Cube Lup Salad thing, and I'm hey, cute block game with fantastic music. And this is all text. I'm not talking over it kind of thing. So it is just kind of, little write-ups and then maybe 1 to 2 minutes of footage kind of thing. And the Killer 7 video did pretty well. It got 30 or 40 likes. The other ones, I think, kind of mellowed out around 8 to 10, which, for it was posting it on my personal, not my personal, the One Controller Port Twitter. And that does not have a huge following or anything like that. So it was probably pretty good considering the limited reach of that Twitter in a lot of ways. But I was trying to think of ways to add value to the One Control Board Twitter in that way. But I think I would like to see going forward how I can do it in a YouTube short TikTok form, and trying to do some voiceovers. So I did 7 of them for Twitter. So I think maybe it'd be a good idea just do maybe another 7 for YouTube Shorts and TikTok, and maybe take some of the ones I did already and try to implement them over and see how that converts over, and then maybe do a few new ones as well. The biggest thing, though, is that if I do these, I would want the workload to be pretty small. And Twitter, super easy to do that, write up, a handful of sentences and then, throw some footage together that represents what I and talking about, and I think that's plenty fine, as that is. But I get a little worried that if I start having to do voiceover, I'm going to want to start editing footage to be like in line with my voiceover, right? And that will require more work. So if I do these, I think I need to be a little careful about the workload I put into them and the frequency of which I do them. I do not think you'll get like 7. I don't think I'll do them each day like I was doing with the Twitter ones where I was like just waking up and then just making them. I think it would be something I pre-planned kind of thing. So that's another thing I worked on anyways too as well. So there are some updates on some stuff I've been working on. Otherwise, things have been pretty quiet because of the intense focus on the Babylon's Fall video. So, but that's pretty much done at this point beyond the pieces that are around it, which are a lot of work, but not nearly as much work as actually doing the video itself. So yeah. So thank you for listening to my way too long update on what's going on, but hopefully if you're into the channel, that's what you're here for, kind of thing. So before we get into like news and things like that, just a couple things I want to go over. One is Final Fantasy Piano Concert Crystalline Resonance. This is a local concert that happened here, although I think it's all over the country, where essentially they go ahead and have the I don't know if it's like a local group of people who play a piano or if they have like traveling people or whatever, but basically it's like a Final Fantasy piano event where they play about 2 hours worth of songs, and then they will go ahead and play like some video along with it, kind of thing. So fairly professional, I would assume, piano players. They all looked very professional at the very least, so it's pretty well produced, I think, overall. And it was really fun, it is, I've grown up with a lot of Final Fantasy in my life, and I do really appreciate the music. I went with my dad, and I got to have the conversation again of like, hey, Cloud is not the main character of the Final Fantasy series. He is the main character of Final Fantasy VII, which is something I've talked to him about many times before and doesn't seem to stick. But maybe since there were visuals and he could see there were all these characters in all these worlds, maybe it sticks this time. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it was a good event. I was particularly worried about like what the Final Fantasy XI representation would look like, and I would say a fairly mixed, right? I mean, Final Fantasy XI just typically does not get a lot of representation on a lot of things. I mean, Shantoto does, but if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know my feelings on Shantoto. But anyways, so they essentially had 2 songs, which is very cool because there were many games that didn't get any representation in terms of music. 1 through 3 they didn't do at all. And then 5 they just did the Chocobo theme for, which is, maybe makes sense given that Boku is like an actual character in that game, right? Which is a Chocobo and his wife Coco or something like that. But you didn't get any like real Final Fantasy V music that was or anything like that. So Final Fantasy XI got more representation than a lot of those other ones. The first one I thought was really good, which is the Tavnasian Archipelago or something like that. I don't know. I've never said that out loud, so please understand if I mispronounce that. And I think that's a really good, it's like the Chains of Promathia area, the like Sandorian colony, I think it was. I mean, I don't know my Final Fantasy XI lore very well, but I think it's like a Sandorian colony, and I think it's the castle that's kind of like in the opening video kind of thing. But anyways, yeah, so there's like the area outside of that, and it's like a very nice theme, and I thought that theme worked really well with the piano. The only issue I had really, and I mean, this is true for a lot of videos where like they really focused on the CG videos, which I mean, if it's a Tavnasian story song, then it makes sense that they'd use the opening video since that is Tavnasian stronghold there that fight happens at. But I guess I wish there was more in-game representation for Final Fantasy XI. Because a lot of games they did use in-game cutscenes for, and some of them were kind of mixed. Like Final Fantasy VII got a lot of in-game cutscene use for like the PlayStation game, not like the remake, which I was kind of surprised. But the pacing was super weird on it. Like it felt like the videos were edited completely separately from each other, from like different people with different like intentions a lot of times. And the Final Fantasy VII one in particular just felt like somebody stringed together 3 video clips and they all sat on screen for way too long. But yeah, so I just kind of wish there's more in-game representation for Final Fantasy XI because you don't really see in-game that much. They did show off the field map for Runfar. because one of the songs was Run Far. And if you don't know, Run Far is like one of the first areas in Final Fantasy XI. And I just am not... Look, I love Run Far. I aligned with the country of Sandoria when I played Final Fantasy XI. So, like, Run Far was, like, my first field music when I would leave town, right? So, like, I do have a connection with that music. It just is not very good, I think, concert music. Like, it's very repetitive. It's more ambient music than anything. But, like, yeah, it's very repetitive, and there's just not a lot going on in that song. So, it's just kind of fairly straightforward. So I kind of just wish they did another song. And then, like, the visuals for it were just like somebody, like, it was kind of like a mix of like somebody in first person walking around the Run Far area. Like, I think at one point I noticed that like they like brushed up against a tree and it like moved the camera because they had collision. But in Final Fantasy 11, like first person mode, you don't see your arms or anything like that. They make your model invisible basically. And then also, like, they use, like, some higher level cameras that felt very, like, there's this old, oh god, what was it called? There was this old, like, Vanadale Live stream feed that they would put on the Play Online website. This is well before, like, YouTube was really a thing. Now there's a Vanadale Live that's on YouTube, and it just kind of sticks around in, like, one town. But there used to be one that would, like, teleport all over the place, and it would, like, show different areas. You can see people playing and things like that. It was pretty cool, actually. I always really enjoyed tuning into it, but it had some of those kind of camera angles as well in there. So, but it just kind of was like there's not a lot happening. I just kind of felt like you could have chose a different song, and also had some better visuals with it. So, anyways, but I mean the music was great and wonderful overall, and the performances were great. And if you liked mostly stuff after Final Fantasy VII and beyond. There's a lot of great things there for you. They did not do a ton of 6, and they did not do a ton of 4 either, but it was represented as well. I think it was like one song for each of those. There was actual cheers, though, for Final Fantasy 15, which I was surprised. And then there's also cheers for Final Fantasy 14, which I expected. So people were really into those. I mean, Final Fantasy 14 is the Final Fantasy now, right? Like Final Fantasy 14 is more important than Final Fantasy 7 these days, I would say. Historically, obviously not so much the case, but from a player base and who's engaged with the Final Fantasy brand, I mean, Final Fantasy 14 is huge, right? So, and like people were saying Shadowbringers is like the best Final Fantasy game in a long time when that came out, right? And that's an expansion pack to Final Fantasy 14. So, anyways, it was a good show though. I really enjoyed it overall, and I would like to go see another one. I'd be curious, like how much the actual lineup of song changes, because I believe they just kind of picked songs per night kind of thing. They don't I don't think it's a set number of songs or set selection of songs for like the entire tour or anything like that. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. So, but yeah, it was good fun, and it was like a local library or something like that. So it was kind of like a little tiny room that everybody was in, which I thought was kind of a fun little feeling too. I mean, it was a theater, but it just felt a lot smaller than I was kind of expecting. But it was pretty full. I think there's a handful of seats in the back that were empty, but a pretty hefty turnout. So yeah, it was a good time. Before we get into news, we got some questions. Singular question from Jillian. Back to Jillian's corner. Jillian has a question that says, best Smash Brothers stages excluding Battlefield and Final Destination. So no Battlefield, no Final Destination. I was actually playing some Smash Brothers when a friend was out here recently. And look, man, I feel bad. I like Smash Brothers a lot. I do not want to play any more Smash Brothers in my life. And there's like so much love in those games and so much going on in them, which is kind of a shame. Because I also feel like Smash Brothers, from the perspective of like a game, gets absorbed into the competitive scene. And you just don't really hear a lot of Smash Brothers talk that's more like casual enjoyment very much. And so like casually enjoying Smash Brothers, I think, is not something I hear and engage with very often. So I'm still a little, I kind of wish items were a little more balanced in Smash Brothers. I love that like stupid whirlwind gun in the ultimate that just like pushes people off stage nonstop. And it's like, this is horrendously broken, but whatever. It's a good time. So Anyway, so there's a handful of stages here that I picked out. I just went down a list, and some of these stages, it says best. I think, these are not best from a competitive stance. So if you're like, oh, that's an unbalanced stage, don't worry so much about that. So the first one I picked here is mostly because I at one point had this grand thought of Smash Brothers where I was like, okay, Solid Snake, not in Smash Brothers with Wii U, right? How could they reuse Solid Snake's moveset with a Nintendo character? And I was all like, Raymond Bryce from Disaster Day of Crisis, he would probably fit in pretty good into Solid Snake's moveset. So I had this idea that's like, maybe that's the way, no, there was no way Disaster Day of Crisis was going to end up as a major part of Smash Brothers. I mean, I know there's like a World of Light thing, but there's never going to be a big connection of Raymond Bryce and Smash Brothers. But I always kind of had the idea of like, oh, it'd be really cool if they had like a natural disaster stage, like in Disaster Day of Crisis. And the Midgar Final Fantasy VII stage with like the summons you get when you collect the materia basically feels like whatever that stage would have been, because there's like a bunch of, I think it's like tidal waves, there's like a volcano and all sorts of stuff, and like Titan shows up and starts doing like Earth stuff. So I even though I maybe didn't play that stage a ton, because by the time that stage came out, I kind of started falling off Smash Brothers. I super was happy to see that stage get in the game, because it's like, oh, my Disaster Day of Crisis stage, just in, cloud form, basically. I really like the Electroplankton stage. It's a nightmare to play on, but I really respect that you can kind of, make it work. I actually don't know if anyone has, look, Electroplankton as a video game is a hard game to make music in the first place. I appreciate that they let you knock the leaves around in a way that actually affects the music and stuff in a fun way. And I'd be curious, I haven't looked online, but I'm sure somebody somewhere has made some kind of silly tune that plays in Smash Brothers using the Electroplankton stage. But tons of appreciation for that stage. It also has oh man, that weird ambient feeling before you do anything in an Electroplankton song. Okay, if you haven't played Electroplankton, I'm sorry, this is not going to make a lot of sense probably, but you there's different tools, and it all is underwater, amoeba based almost. I don't know what they are honestly, but they're underwater, and you pick the tool, and that's the thing you make music with. But until you do something, most of the time you open it up and everything is just there, and all the cells are there, they're just hanging out. But everything still moves really slowly, and it's bloop, 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 bloop. There's bubble noises and things like that, and it's just waiting for you to do something. And there's that period of time where you're just in this weird ambient middle ground between the menu and starting something. There's something about that in Electroplankton that I just really, really appreciate. And I feel in Smash Brothers, when everyone's apart from each other and kind of nothing's happening other than the tadpoles just flying into the water because of how the leaves are set up, it kind of feels like that sometimes. It just feels like that moment of just nothing's happening, and it's this weird silence, but there's an ambient living feeling to this world as this tadpole flies across the stage and lands in the water and makes a splash noise. It's I don't know, there's something about that. I think it's beautiful. Anyways, Smashville, this is I believe the Brawl version of the Animal Crossing stage, and I just thought it was really cool they integrated the internal clock stuff into that game. And so the time of day matters for when you play that stage. I believe on Saturdays, KK Slider shows up and plays music as well, which I think is really cool. I just thought it was a really nice way to kind of keep the spirit of the Animal Crossing stage in Smash Brothers. Picto Chat. I think it's just a fun stage in general with all the little drawings that happen on things. There's a Picto Chat 2 as well. I don't remember the difference between them, so I guess Picto Chat 1 and 2. Spear Pillar. I don't know why. I kind of have some fond memories of this stage. This is, I believe, added in Smash Wii U. And I played Smash Wii U online a lot really early on, and for some reason I enjoyed that stage a lot. It's the Pokemon stage, and it's there's 2 levels to it, and so it's almost you ever played the Hyrule Castle level in Melee and Beyond? Temple is what it's called, I think. There's this weird underground area where you're kind of safe. And this stage has that, but then like the Pokemon in the background like shoot laser beams and stuff, and it can go and attack the entire underground area. So it kind of has that, but there's also like a threat in staying under it as well. So it's kind of interesting. And the last one, which is like a hot trash stage, but every time I play the game, I somehow keep coming back to it, is Pac-Land. Because Pac-Land is just the game Pac-Land in stage form. And I'm just like, that's great. I mean, I'm sure the stage itself is not actual layout of Pac-Land, but it's just like, hey, we're going to start the game from Pac-Man's house. You're going to travel all the way to the Angel, and you're going to go back and all the way back to Pac-Man's house. And like, that is just, as far as I have experience with Pac-Land, that is Pac-Land. But here, we did it in Smash Brothers form. So I have a ton of respect for Smash Brothers as a video game. I just kind of wish it was a different video game at this point. I think I just need something to change with the game itself at this point for me. So, but you know, I think part of it too is just like, it's been a long time since that game came out. I just don't have a lot of reason to go back to it. So like, I appreciate it for what it is, but like, once I was done with World of Light, I was kind of like, I'm kind of good. And so I think maybe some more structure to that stuff in some ways would be like a fun way. Like, I feel like World of Light was a good idea on paper, but like the implementation was just weird, and it's just really long. And like, I felt like a lot of times it doesn't necessarily highlight the strengths of each game that it was representing. There were some clever ideas though, I will say. So, you know, anyways, Smash Brothers, I'm sure there's like a podcast where I talked about it back a long time ago. That game came out within the frame of this podcast being alive. So somewhere out there, I've talked about Smash Brothers. So anyways, thank you again, Jillian, for your question. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. There's no formal question asking set up at this point, so just let me know. Otherwise, we're just going to keep moving on with Jillian's questions for now. We got some news stories here before we wrap up the show. One is a new Nintendo Switch rhythm game called Felicity's Door. Reminds me a little bit of that demo game on Nintendo Switch where it like kind of has these bars that kind of fly in from the back. But it has a really cute aesthetic, and it seems like there's like a structure to it as well. So it's not just like, you know, pick a song and then try your best to finish it and get a high score. There's like a, it seems like maybe a story and some like cute illustrations and cutscenes and things like that, as well as a room decoration feature where you can go and decorate your room and things like that. Which I think it looks cute and appealing. I think my only problem is that like, for something like that, I feel like I want the music part of the game to feel more integrated into the story. And so obviously I can't really say that it's not from this point. There hasn't been a lot of gameplay out there. It's just like one video they posted. But it gave me the feeling that like the music is not going to be ingrained into the story or into what's happening in a context form that I would like. Again, just impressions based off what I saw. You know, I like thinking about how Rhythm Thief does that, but Rhythm Thief is a variety rhythm game, not so much a, you know, static kind of like, here's the game mechanics kind of thing. But I think like a Tokudoll is a great example of something like that. You know, Space Channel 5 is a great example of something like that. You know, I think there are ways to do that. I just feel like this game has like a separation that I'm not necessarily sure really connects in a way that I would find satisfying. It just kind of looks like you do the music and the music unlocks more stuff, but it's not like doing the music feels like you're affecting the world. But again, based off a brief trailer that showed off some gameplay and some of the room building stuff. So I could be very wrong with that. As far as I am aware, it's only on Switch. Yeah, it's only coming to Switch, it looks like. But there's a US release, so there's that at least. Area 35, never heard of them before. Level 5 had their show. They showed off some more latent stuff. Nothing really new there other than just some more CG cutscenes and I think some art. And it was the kind of the big thing was that like it's going to take place in America or something like that. I don't have a lot of interest in like Professor Layton. I have that Lady Layton game that I was interested in that I have not played still. So I think unless they really show something that blows my socks off, like I think that's still going to be my next Layton game if I get to it. So they showed that off. They showed off some more Deca Police stuff. Nothing really new there, but that game still just looked great. Inazuma 11 Victory Road. So I think, as far as I'm aware, this is the first time they showed off gameplay for this. So this is that Switch Inazuma 11 game. I don't know if this is a Switch only game. I'll try to look that up while I'm talking here. But yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've never really looked at or played an Inazuma 11 game. From my vague memory of the game, I will say this game maybe looks a little more similar than I expected it to be. It's like very 3DS game looking, very high level view of like isometric view for a lot of the aspects. It's kind of PS4, iOS, and Android as well. And level 5 Visions is what it was for the event. But anyway, so it kind of feels like a 3DS game to some extent to me, and maybe on mobile is maybe a good reason why it feels that way, because it's still going to be, and I guess it's on Switch as well, it's still going to be a portable game. They actually have a lot of different ways you can play it. Like even on the Switch version, I think they have the vertical mode, which I mean, it's I think for largely the mobile display. So you can play it that way if you want to on there as well, and you can play it with touchscreen, you can play it with the stylus. Or you can play it with like controller support. But it just looks a little slow, I will say. Like as somebody who does not know that franchise, it just looks slow. So if you're an Inazuma 11 fan, let me know. I'd be curious to hear what makes those games cool. Because if like for me, as somebody who's outside of that, I think that was it Tsubasa game on PS4 or something like that. That game looks a little more engaging visually, at least. Obviously the visual styles are very different, but like just like pacing wise, this game feels a little slow with how all the characters move. It's like it's very zoomed out view, but they do like come in for like, special cutscenes with certain special kicks and things like that. And I think like it has very much that level 5 style with a lot of its character designs, very Yokai Watch feeling in terms of like the people itself. The main character looks a little stumpy. I mean, we've seen him before, but like something about him looks very short and stout in a way that just doesn't really feel like it would fit like a main character in a soccer game. But like, hey man, whatever, it's fine. And then also, I like the main rival design though. He's very much that delinquent type though. Like his hair is like pulled back and he has like these little different colored strands in his hair and things like that. I really like his design a lot. So, all level 5 stuff, though, they had English on their websites and trailers, so it seems like the intention is that all these games will be localized. Oh, there's a Fantasy Life trailer. I didn't even go and look at that, honestly, but it seems like all these games are intended to be localized at some point. But they haven't said if they're the publisher or not at this point, or if they're going to try to partner with somebody else. I looked on the page and tried to find any mention of publisher, but it just kind of mentioned that they were the developer. So, and they're kind of saying, oh, it's open to what we'll charge for it and things like that. So I'll be curious to see how eventually all these games come out. But one more thing, which actually is kind of important, is if you don't know, for a while in Japan, they've had a live service game called Megaton Musashi. It originally was like a packaged product you could buy, but now it's a free-to-play game in Japan. And it was kind of weird because they put a lot of effort into it, and they actually did, at like Tokyo Game Show, have an English trailer for it, and it seemed like they were kind of trying to maybe eventually get it into English, but it just kind of disappeared in the English market for a bit. I mean, it was around the time like Yokai Watch 4 kind of disappeared as well, I feel like. It's just kind of like, it was just kind of strange that it was kind of going on, but not coming out here. But anyway, so they're launching, I think, a new version of the game from what it sounds like. I don't necessarily know if it's like a new release or if it's just like a next season kind of thing. But with that new set of content, they are bringing it to an international market. They're including cross-play between all the platforms. So I think it's like PlayStation, Switch, PC, maybe one more platform. I don't think it's Xbox though. So maybe like an Android or something like that. But I don't remember for sure, but definitely PlayStation, PC, and Switch. I think the other platform was PlayStation 5 is what it was. So anyways, but cross-play between all those, which is very cool. I might want to check that game out, but probably be something I have to get like a group for if I want to do that. And it being free to play, I think is already kind of hard to get people involved in because everyone's kind of coming in with the expectation of like, oh, is this going to be kind of a money grubby kind of game, right? It can be hard with those kind of live service games, I feel like, that are free to play. So at least within my friend group, maybe I just have some very, I don't know, you would say, strict friends in terms of like how they view those kind of games. Not that that's a bad thing, I will say. Just kind of a different way to look at them kind of thing. It's always like a weird negotiation process for us to play games, but I think it actually works pretty well because it kind of makes sure that we don't play games that like, somebody's not going to be interested in and not drag them along with us on a game they have no interest in it. So I think it focuses on games that we all kind of as a group agree is a good experience to have with all of us. So anyway, it's very cool that stuff's coming over. So that is like an actual localization announcement. And I was Professor Layton, I have to assume that's going to come over. And Inazuma 11, I mean, they have a US page for it. So I'm guessing they're pretty much committing to this stuff coming over. They just haven't said if they're going to do it themselves or not. So a couple of smaller news stories here. Three smaller news stories here. Grim Guardians got delisted from, I believe, the Xbox and Nintendo Switch storefronts, maybe multiple storefronts beyond that. But and I don't know if it's back yet. But it was kind of weird that it got delisted. Time to find out. There's a game called like Grimguard, and they filed like a trademark dispute or something like that. So they had to rename the game. So going forward, it'll be called Gal Guardians, which, if you don't know, Grim Guardians is a Galgun spinoff, which I was surprised how many people didn't know that. But, I don't think people in the West know Galgun super well beyond, just laughing at it at the horny game kind of thing, right? So I don't know if the game's back at this point, but it is an interesting question of, like, what that means physically for games. I believe their PQ was supposed to release something somewhat soon, but I think they may have said they were going to push it back. I don't remember for sure on that one, though. So, and I'm not going to look it up right now. So, but I'll be curious to see if that delays the physical for that at all. I think Limited Run Games also took pre-orders for Grim Guardians too, but you know me, I'm not going to buy anything for Limited Run Games. I didn't buy the Shin-Chan thing, so rest in peace, Shin-Chan. I'll buy the digital version or see if I can get the physical at some point, not through, waiting the exorbitant amount of time that it takes for Limited Run Games to ship something. So, Wii U's. There's a problem in the Wii U universe. This actually got pretty big traction, so not too terribly surprised that it is going around, because the Wii U, if you don't uses flash memory for like its OS and things like that, and apparently the flash memory that's in there is not particularly of the greatest quality. It's like NAND. Well, I mean, NAND flash memory, there's nothing wrong with that, but like the type of NAND flash memory might be not great, or at least how the Wii U handles it, where there might be some issues with the NAND memory, is causing problems where essentially the Wii U will not launch anymore. It says there, essentially the OS information on here is corrupt and it will not launch anymore. So people are finding that if they haven't plugged their Wii U's in a long time, their Wii U's are now dead. I actually had a friend that struggled with this issue at one point a long time ago, but it was not something that in my mind was something I ever thought about being a wide scale issue, but apparently it is. But yeah, just like basically the system file is corrupt and you can't use your Wii U anymore. So my friend at the time sent it to Nintendo and they fixed it for him. Although they just kind of wiped the system memory and re-imaged it basically. And it sounds like, if you've ever gone through the process of like hacking your Wii or Wii U or 3DS, during that process, they will ask you to back up your, whatever, memory or your OS data basically. Like I'm going to say this in stupid baby terms. So sorry if I get these wrong. But like basically you back up your OS and you can reapply that OS and things like that. So they will ask you to do that in most situations for firmware, basically just to be like, hey, if something messes up, you want this kind of thing, right? So you can back up to it. And it sounds like you can potentially reapply that into the actual flash memory, but I don't know what that process looks like, how accessible it is for people. It seemed like people were kind of saying that like, oh, this is kind of a pain in the butt to do. So maybe not something that everyone's going to want to do. So it sounds like, though, it's something you can prevent if you like regularly use your Wii U once in a while. So, for me, that's not really a problem because I actually have both my Wii U's out and I still power them on pretty frequently for Wii games. Not so much for DS games anymore because I have an actual DS capture card, but for Wii games for sure, and occasionally Wii U games as well. So just plug in that Wii U every once in a while. But there's another kind of like side story to this that like also the Switch operates on a lot of the same kind of technology for the Switch cartridges. And so there's a big question of like, how long will these last? And it seemed to be the answer is like maybe between like 10 to 20 years kind of thing. So, yeah. Old hardware stuff is always a challenge. And, these companies don't necessarily plan for this deep into a system's lifespan, right? That's why you have a ton of Xboxes that were dying due to the clock capacitor leaking a bunch of acid, right? So, not too terribly surprising. There's some issues that kind of cropped up, but maybe sooner than usual for the Wii U kind of thing. But the Wii U's lifespan has passed at this point for the most part, from Nintendo's concern. So I don't think they have any issue with like what they did. with the platform kind of thing. But with the Switch cartridges, it does open up an interesting question of like, limited run games and things like that. There's always like we preserve games and stuff through these cartridges, but like, if you're keeping a limited run game sealed, after 10 years, that data's 10 to 20 years. Sounds like that data is potentially going to corrupt faster than like a typical cartridge would beforehand, because like the type of data they're using are different. This seems to also be true for like things like Game Boy and things like that. There's a YouTube video I'll link as well, like from that, because they went into some decent detail about it. This one fellow that seemed like he's a smaller account, but it seems like he got a lot of traction with this news story. So that's good. I think I've seen some other articles or other videos pop up since then from like Spawn Wave and things like that. But this guy had a pretty chill style to him, so I'll link him because I liked his video. And the last news story here is kind of an interesting one. Super Mario Run. We haven't talked about this on the podcast ever, actually. I don't know. Was Super Mario Run a part of the One Controller Port history? Maybe. It might have been very early on in the podcast history. I mean, I know I played Fire Emblem Heroes. I don't remember if that was before I started the podcast or afterwards, but that was around the same time when Nintendo was doing their big mobile push. Tomodachi Life? No. Miitomo. Miitomo, I'm pretty sure, was before, when I was playing Miitomo, was before the podcast. Yeah. So I'm going to guess that maybe Super Mario Run was before we started talking on the podcast. But anyways, so this thing came out a long time ago. I think at the time, Miyamoto was like, you should think of this as the next Mario. And then kind of nobody really played it. Well, not nobody. It was fairly successful. But, the kind of thing that Nintendo's trying to hold on to is like, hey, we don't want to rely on whales for games, right? Like people who spend tons and tons and ton of money. And the reality is that's not really how things worked out. And so I think for Super Mario Run, it's like $5 to buy the whole thing, I think is what it was. So like a $5 Mario game. But they added something new recently where you can play one level free for a day. So before you could play through, I think like the first chapter of the game for free. Now it sounds like you can play a single level for free, even if you don't buy anything. So that's kind of neat that they are still supporting that game in some way, or at least still thinking about it. Haven't really seen a lot of, I think, extensive thought from Nintendo on smartphone games lately. I mean, obviously, it's a very different time for Nintendo before they did this stuff. But they kind of had their games that came out, and they just kind of kept them all going. And like successful ones, at least, right? Dragalia's Lost went for a long time. Animal Crossing still going strong. I kind of want to check out the Animal Crossing game on mobile. I probably should do that before it dies. But, and not that they didn't announce it shutting down, but, eventually it will. And Mario Kart, I kind of feel like maybe I should check those games out at some point, because I feel like a lot of the reasons I ignored them at the time was because like they're mobile games. Why would I ever play them? Where I think today I don't really care about that as much. So I don't know. Maybe I'll think about those games, because like Animal Crossing, it's a different kind of Animal Crossing, and I think that's something I've been looking for a while. And so actually looking at a different Animal Crossing that's not like the console ones might not be a bad thing to do, right? Same with Mario Kart. Maybe Mario Kart on a mobile platform feels different from the frustrations I've had with Mario Kart for over a decade, right? So, anyways, I played Chocobo Racing this week, and we're not talking about that because I've still got to put more time into it. But I played that game. I was like, oh man, the drifting in this game is so different from Mario Kart, and I'm into it. I'm glad it's different. And I kind of feel like too many kart racing games rely on the mini turbo boost kind of thing. So, anyways. Either way, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for coming. OneController.com is the website. Like I said, Babylon's Fall video, if you're doing the Ko-fi, unless something happens, it should be available for you at least before Wednesday this week, if not earlier. Just go check out the Ko-fi page, and you can see that link in the description if you don't know. Otherwise, it'll show up in the next week or two, probably is when I think it will come out. But the Damn Stompland review is available there, and that won't be available until April. So go check that out. If you haven't seen it, I did the panel a couple weeks ago as well. That's up on the One Control Port Plus channel, so check that out if you want to. And then I don't know, there's like some kind of there's some I've been so invested in the Babylon's Fall video. I do not remember what's actually scheduled to come out this week. I think there's like a podcast highlight coming out this week. I can't remember what it is though. So please check that out too, I guess. But whatever it is scheduled. So I'll tweet about it whenever it comes out, I'm sure. So check that out as well. And then, hopefully I can pull my life back together now that I'm out of this Babylon Fall hole and be a responsible adult yet again. But yeah, I mean, 7 days straight of basically working on that video nonstop is rough. There's a lot of challenges with those videos, and one thing I'm actually testing is the sample rate of audio with this podcast, because I've been having issues with audio, and that showed up in the Babylon's Fall video. But it's not a problem with the source audio; it's a problem with how the audio is interfacing with my video editor. So I'm hoping that means that this week's podcast will be on the YouTube crunchy free, where if you've been just listening on the audio side, I don't think you've been hearing any crunch, but on the YouTube side, it's been kind of crunchy lately. So anyways, thank you guys so much again, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.